My name's Luke Toohill and I'm an early childhood consultant from New South Wales, and today we're going to be talking about the role of environments in children's learning and particularly in relation to the Early Years Learning Framework. And I'm here today with Judy Radich and Neville Dwyer.
Hi Luke, I'm Judy Radich and I'm an early childhood educator. I am the director of a service in northern New South Wales called Kaloon Children's Centre.
And Luke, I'm Neville Dwyer, I'm an early childhood educator, and I'm from Griffith, New South Wales, and I run the Dorothy Wade Centre for Early Learning.
Both of you have really, quite unique environments at each of your services. And I'm just wondering if, to start off, you could tell us a bit about your environment, just so people have a sense of what we're talking about.
Well, Luke, ours is was just built in 1985. It's Mark II of a standard issue children's service that was rolled out at the time. We're based in a rural community, obviously, and over that period of time, it's turned from a 40-place children's service into one that's now licensed for 73, and over a very, very large couple of blocks of land. So, and we've got a fairly big emphasis on the natural environment and outdoor spaces.
And Kaloon is a bit like the Dorothy Wade Centre. Started off as a government issue building, and we've retained our service as 40 places, catering for babies, toddlers and preschoolers, but made some modifications to both our indoor and an outdoor environment to make it more workable, really.
I mean, you're both obviously quite passionate about the role the environment plays in what you do. Can you talk a bit about how you see the environment contributing to children's learning?
Yeah, probably from our perspective is, well, from me personally, I grew up in the bush, I grew up on a farm, and the whole time we were spent outside. You know, when we spent a lot of time playing outside on weekends, out roaming the farm, roaming around the hills and that sort of stuff. And I look today, and we look today as an organisation at what children have access to and how play has been brought back into smaller spaces, and what's that's actually doing to children. So I think the stuff that drives us is the fact that we've actually got a couple of spaces, which one is incredibly large, but that ability to bring a natural space and a very big space to children that they might not have access to elsewhere, and to also show parents and also those children, but also the broader community, that children need to be in a natural world and not totally plasticized, and the fact that adults don't also need to be in children's spaces all of the time.
I guess for me, I didn't grow up on a farm, but I did grow up with a lot of space around me, and I guess I grew up with a father that was a very keen gardener. So for me, that I guess made me a gardener, and it's certainly something that I really value for young children. And when I was at home, when my young children were quite young, I guess I gardened and they gardened and played alongside me. So it's been something that I've always wanted to bring to my early childhood centre and service, and is something that I think when children engage with the natural world, there is a lot to learn, and so it is something I've always been passionate about. Like Neville, I think children do need to be in places where they can just muck around with sand and dirt and water, and have time to do those things. So, and I guess the more children we see in childcare and children's services these days, that I think we often hurry children. And I do take a lesson from my youngest son when he was 3, and he said to me, "Can we just stay at home today, Mum?" And I think that was a really strong message for me, and something that I bring to my early childhood practice now is to give children time to be in environments and really be able to explore that environment at their pace, not at our pace.
I think that's really important too. It's also important to show that to parents, to families, that time is really important, that you can actually have big blocks of time to just be outside and just to dig in the garden, to grow vegetables, to play hide and seek amongst the grasses, and that you don't have to buy lots of stuff to do that. You can actually create that in natural spaces. And I know that in Judy's the environment there, they've got all those little, like they're small rooms, but they're all just natural spaces, grasses and little place where kids can hide, and just that ability, that freedom to be out there and just to do their work of just playing and just interacting with each other, and when you listen to their conversations, and so you don't actually always have to be involved, and just listen to hear what they're actually saying and what they're talking about, some of the conceptual stuff that comes out, and just by being able to play in that space and have time to do that.
I guess for me, I was really delighted with the belonging, being, becoming, because I think we've shifted in this world that we live in to almost want everyone to become and not give everyone time to just be. And I think our environments are certainly set up so children can just be themselves and learn at their pace with educators who are really engaged with them, whether intimately alongside or from a distance.
I guess I get the sense from what you're saying that the environment's not just one part of what you do, but it really seems to permeate everything that you're doing has something to do with how the environment supports that.
Yes, it does. And I guess for me, it's relationships are the core of what happens in early childhood. And so I really like to think about our spaces as spaces that do nurture relationships. And so that's relationships between children themselves and between children and the educators. So I really like it also. And I think it's just from listening and watching children, that children do need time to be alone. And I think perhaps in this world where we're so focused on risk and safety that sometimes we forget that actually all of us do like to be alone. And when we watch children who hide under the tables or get behind the curtain, they're giving us a strong message, and I think sometimes we're missing those messages. So for me, our kind of environment allows children to have those opportunities to be alone, to play with others or alongside, or with or without an educator right there.
And I think that's that focus on trying to manage the risk. We've actually sort of gone to an extreme where we try to remove all the risk, and we know that to grow and develop, we actually need to do risky behaviour, to take risk. That's not to sort of say we let children do anything in their space, but we have to enable children to be able to operate in the real world, not in an artificial space where there is no risk and no fear of falling over. If they do fall over, they're going to fall onto soft fall or something soft, and they're never going to get scratched. And I think we have to enable children to get the bumps and bruises along the way, because one, it makes more interesting stories when they get older. They say, I've got this scar from here and this scar from there. But also the fact that we actually grow. We grow from failure. We learn to do things by failing. You only ever learn to build a block tower when you build up and it falls over, and so you actually know how to place things. You only ever learn to ride a bike when you fall off a bike. Then you learn how to balance. If we don't do those sort of things, then we're actually setting children up to fail continually right through life, and I think that's a bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes when we sanitise things as well, despite our intention, they sometimes actually become more dangerous.
Yeah, we do. And I think if we probably looked at the statistics around children's accidents, they're not actually getting any better. Children in our early learning spaces can be really so bubble wrapped that there's no fear that they're ever going to hurt themselves in any way. And so what does that mean when they get older?
Well, I can remember working in a service where the 5-year-olds playground, or 4 and 5-year-olds playground, was so sort of sanitised that there was nothing really higher than knee height to climb on, because that was felt to be safe. But in response to that, the children taught themselves to shimmy up the shade cloth poles. Yeah. And if you turned your back, you'd find them sitting on top of the stage sails calling down to you, which was a far more dangerous situation if you wanted to look at it in terms of danger.
And I think that's what happens as well, is when we try to reduce the risk, or we try to manage the risk, and we take it away, children then actually up the ante and find something else they can actually do, because they need to do risky behaviour. And I think in both of our spaces, there is built-in risk. I've got a mulberry tree that kids can climb and get the mulberries out of. They've got hills, they've got rocks and that sort of stuff, and all those things we can sort of say, oh, that's a bit scary. But our children manage it and they work really well, and I've got young babies who are walking on really uneven surfaces, because I know that that's actually really good for brain development. And actually also, when they walk out of our centre, that's what the real world looks like. And being able to play with mud and being able to play with a friend and get covered in mud, and that's a lot about to say, oh, well, I can do this, and who am I? And children's sense of who they actually are, and that also that sense of being able to do stuff on their own. And the EYLF talks about children's sense of agency. And I think when young children can do things on their own, and you've got an environment that supports that, where they can actually go off and plant or water the garden, or maybe help set up the climbing equipment, or whatever else they want to do in those spaces, or even just sit around a rock and place some rocks on another rock, that they're in control, that there isn't somebody out there saying, you have to do this now, have to do that now.